It's 40 years since His Royal Highness Prince Charles was crowned Prince of Wales. And over those 40 years, he's been involved in a number of issues and had a number of projects, but none has been more controversial and excited more public debate than his interest in the built environment.
Coed Darcy is intended to be a whole new community built from scratch. It's near Neath in West Glamorgan, and the first houses started going up in February 2009. The development will continue for 20 years. Since becoming Prince of Wales, some have said that Charles has done little outwardly in this principality. Will Coed Darcy change that? Because the Prince's Foundation for the Built Environment has a key role in this development. In the course of an exclusive interview, I intend to ask the Prince to tell me about his plans.
I've been trying to break the conventional mold, which I happen to think is unfit for purpose in the 21st century with the kind of challenges the world is now facing.
The Prince's Foundation has researched what they call mind, body and spirit, the human response to the environment, which they intend to include in the building of Coed Darcy.
The body is a relatively straightforward one in that if you're walking to get your daily needs on foot and you're walking to work or you're walking to school, just half an hour walking a day really does a lot for your health in terms of reducing obesity, especially amongst children, and reducing heart disease. So again, a walkable neighbourhood is not just a convenient thing, but it's actually a healthy thing. I think in terms of the mind, if you're designing a development where you're creating public spaces like streets and squares where you meet your neighbours and you meet other people, it gives you an understanding of a kind of extended family. It's a social place to be, rather than a more privatised place to be that relies on private transport like the car. So when you get on to more difficult things to define, like the spirit of a place, that gets into things like beauty, which people respond to. They don't like to define, but if you have an inspiring place where the buildings are beautiful and the landscape is beautiful, it has a positive impact on the way you feel and your quality of life.
The Prince was given the opportunity to present his thinking in the 2009 Dimbleby lecture.
In the 30 years or so that I've been attempting to understand and address the many related problems, I have tried to dig deep and ask myself what it is in our general attitude to the world that is ultimately at fault. In doing so, of course, it must have appeared as though I was just flitting from one subject to another, from agriculture to architecture, from education to healthcare. But I was merely trying to point out where the imbalance was most acute, where the essential unity of things, as reflected in nature, was being dangerously fragmented and deconstructed. The point is, people are drawn by the quality of the environment. They enjoy the atmosphere of it, the character, the sense that it relates to their own humanity. And once you start to make an intervention in an area where there's been a lot of deprivation or whatever, or the environment has been destroyed, people will respond to it. I mean, you only have to look around now to see that the damage we've been doing to the entire planet should make us sit up and think, well, perhaps we should bring some things back that were needlessly thrown away, like our relationship with nature, for instance, which has been, again, I think, needlessly discarded, abandoned, denigrated, to the point where we have expunged any reference to nature at all from our lives, or from the way we build, or from what we surround ourselves with. We're creating such dangers for ourselves. All these things I've been trying to point out for years, but to a chorus of opposite people saying, well, you're just wanting to turn the clock back. Well, that's a pretty fatuous sort of argument, isn't it?
It would seem that the Prince has come to Wales to make a larger statement than just building a new urban village. His foundation is producing a template for life. This village is a sort of crucible of his beliefs. Can it really work?
I think that's the real issue about trying to do these places is, you're saying we can make a community, you can't make communities, and the Prince should understand that, because he's very interested in sort of organic forms in terms of the architecture and how things evolve, and you know, he does understand that. So why does he not understand that you can't build these places and people them with you know, sort of Miss Marple types on bikes, you know, going down the high street, and somebody bowling a hoop.
I think you look at Coed Darcy and you see the street being reintroduced again. It's near to an existing community. And I suspect I, like most other members of the profession, will go, maybe.
Is this the first time you've actually done something in this country, as far as...
Yes, it is.
When he first entered this debate 25 years ago, the Prince was scorned as ignorant and opinionated. More recently, he's been accused of being something rather more effective, powerful. He's one of the few people in Britain in a position to take on a project like Parry or Coed Darcy.
He doesn't have actual power, but he has influence, you see, and that's almost the same thing if you're the Prince. And people are very wary of that.
His intention to make a difference in his life means that he's taken a more difficult path for himself. He could have easily, I think, spent his life skiing and playing polo, and he's chosen not to do that. And people give him a lot of stick for having made a choice that he wants to make things better.
Do you feel yourself that you have too much power? You've been accused of having too much power.
I haven't got any power at all. What power have I got? I've only got the power of ideas. And people don't like that, do they? Because you're suggesting that there's another way of looking at things, which I put perfectly politely for a long time. There's a more integrated way of looking at things. I happen to mind deeply about it. And if people want to pay any attention, they can. If they don't want to, as you notice only too well, they don't. But the trouble is that I've been trying to break the conventional mold, which I happen to think is unfit for purpose in the 21st century with the kind of challenges the world is now facing. Many of those challenges have been man-made, surprise, surprise. And all I'm saying is that unless we alter some of these ways and bring the baby back that was thrown out with the bathwater, then I'm sorry, but the problems are going to be so enormous that I don't want to be around to see them. I don't want your children or grandchildren or other people's to have to suffer the consequences of all this. And I still think that the built environment is a very important part of all that.
Coed Darcy is a 20-year project, so I think there's a little bit more talking to be done. But at the moment, the focus seems to be on Prince Charles versus major architects. But those aren't the questions at all.
The real questions are, how can we create a sense of place in new building and green spaces? Will we walk or drive to work? Can we make new communities where we can live in harmony, and how densely can we do that? These are planning and development issues.
If nothing else, Coed Darcy brings some of those hidden mysteries out into the open.
So all these things are interlinked, I believe, and all I've tried to do so far in my life, with great difficulty, is to try and explain why I've been particularly interested in these areas. Environment, agriculture, architecture and the built environment, healthcare and education. Because all these things matter in terms of how we relate to the world and how we rediscover that essential harmony, I think, that is so important to rediscover with nature.